In Odisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, he shows the different paths which leads to higher rebirth and definitive goodness or liberation omniscience. He has been all these practices have been structured into the practices of the three beings with three capacities. So the verse which says happiness in the three realms like dew on a blade shows the path from here, the path of the beings with intermediate scope or capacities. So the detailed explanations have been given this morning. So with the help of the antidote, there is the wisdom realizing emptiness, destroying the grasping at self, and making the mind, the suchness of the mind, being free from the defilement, which is called liberation, and this suchness of the mind or the emptiness of the mind being when it is with defilements is called the Tathagata Garbha, or the essence of the Tathagata. And this suchness of the mind with the defilement, when this suchness is freed from all the defilements, with the help of the antidote, what you attain is that of the bodhi or enlightenment. So happiness of the three realms, which are like the dew on a blade of grass, is subject to instantaneous fading away. So it's very fragile, it's transient, and ends always in destruction. And the psychophysical aggregates, which are the results of these karma and delusions, so long as you have them, you will not have happiness, true happiness. And therefore, to strive for the supreme state of enlightenment, which is that of the pacification of all the defilements, and that never wavers, is the practice of Bodhisattva. And then the next verse, cultivating bodhicitta is the Bodhisattva practice, shows that of the practices of, from here it shows the practice of the beings with great capacity, beings of great capacity. So the term Chittotpada, or which is another term for bodhicitta, Semkye in Tibetan, refers to having a very vast attitude, broad-mindedness, rather than thinking of one's own liberation alone. So you think of liberating all sentient beings who are like yourself, under the sway of delusions and suffering. So even those arahants who have overcome the destructive emotions are still left with the cognitive obscurations. And so they are not, because of that, they are not able to see everything, all knowable objects as they are. So in order for this to happen, in order to see all phenomena, the conventional and the ultimate, and in order to be able to help all sentient beings effortlessly, you have to be able to overcome, you have to have overcome both the obscurations, cognitive, as well as the destructive emotions. So to have this wish to liberate all sentient beings, or lead all sentient beings to such a goal of enlightenment, of Buddhahood, which is qualified by that of having being able to help oneself and others completely is such an aspiration or wish is called Bodhisattva. So this is rooted in compassion, as explained earlier. The bodhicitta is complemented by the wish to attain enlightenment and the wish to help other sentient beings. And so in order to have this wish to or aspiration for enlightenment, Buddhahood, you have to understand what that enlightenment is. So generally, you have to understand be able to understand that the delusions are something which can be put an end to, and generally that it is possible, and particularly that it is possible for yourself to attain that enlightenment. And in order to, you are here intending to help others when you wish for this ultimate enlightenment. And so this aspiration for Buddhahood, which is together with the wish, the primary mind, which is together with the wish for enlightenment, is called the bodhicitta. So both yourself and others do not want suffering, but want happiness, and everyone has the potential to achieve the goal of happiness and overcome suffering, and we all have the same right as well. And so when you think about yourself and others, you are on one individual, single individual, whereas others are numberless, and therefore they are more important. If you give up oneself, if you give up a single person for the benefit of all sentient beings, then it's worth doing that. It is okay. Whereas if you forsake all others just for the sake of yourself alone, that is not right. And so, secondly, when you think of attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others, your main intention or goal is to help others. And when you do that, that enlightenment for yourself comes as a byproduct, as Lama Tsongkhapa says. So when you have that wish, then you start you begin to the path starting for that of the three countless eons to accumulate merit and wisdom. So when you are able to dedicate yourself, your speech, body, mind and speech, for the benefit of other sentient beings, and do not have any other thought other than helping others only, this is a great courage. And so, as it is said in Bodhisattva Charyavatara, which intelligent person will feel tired of working working to develop this bodhicitta, which overcomes all despairs for oneself and helps others. Otherwise, when you are not able to think like that, then when you see someone better than yourself, you become jealous, and then you also, as a byproduct of that, you only suffer. Whereas if you dedicate yourself only for the benefit of others, if you only think of benefiting others, those fears and hopes will naturally be reduced, although they may not be overcome completely right away, but all the unhappiness, dissatisfaction that you have because of self-centeredness will go away. So the greater your courage to work for the others, then you will be able to help others. You will have more courage to work for others. And so even if you may be a non-believer, if you think of helping others more, you are happier. So helping others is not only about religion, doing some religion. So long as you have a mind, it is through that you should dedicate yourself, think of helping others. So wherever I go in the world, whoever I meet, I always say that, of course, everybody has the right to, whether they want to practice religion or not, which religion they choose, they have the right to do so. And everyone wants happiness and not suffering. So no one can actually make the whole world free of suffering. Not the Buddha, nor Jesus Christ, and the great teachers, founders of the different teachers who have come in the world. No one has been able to eliminate all the suffering in this one's environment. So although if you think of bodhicitta, then whatever may be happening in the world around you, you will not be disturbed. As Bodhisattva Charyavatara says, you will not find a leather enough to cover the whole land, but you will be, if you are able to cover your feet with leather, that will be the same as covering the whole land. So happiness and suffering are rooted, have their source in one's own mind, and therefore, if you are able to give some shape to your mind, if you are able to work within yourself, and then overcome you'll be able to deal with whatever is happening around you. They will not disturb you. So, if you need friends, you need to have trust. So, if you have friends, then you will be happy with being with others. If you have to live always in suspicion and doubt, how can you be happy? If you always stay distant from others, how can there be happiness in the human world? If you are able to live all by yourself without depending on food and anything, then that may be another case. But you have to eat food, you have to wear clothes, and therefore you have to depend on others. So since you are dependent on the society that you live in, if you are able to live happily with others, then that's what we need. If you always have to live in suspicion and in fear and so forth, and the society that you live without being friendly with others, then you will not be happy. So if you are compassionate, affectionate, you will have calmer mind, and because of that, your elements in your body will be balanced, and you will have health, good health. If your mind is always disturbed, then you are not happy, you will have a shorter life. So isn't that true? So happiness is something that you have to find from within yourself, not from outside. And then, of course, we have the so-called enemies who disturb our happiness. But if you are the main enemy is within yourself. And so if you are able to tame your mind completely, then the external enemies will not be able to do much harm to you. Even if the whole world may arise as enemies of yourself, they will not be able to harm you. The next verse, from the beginningless time your mothers have cherished you. So, and the next one, all suffering comes from yearning for your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the intention to benefit others. Therefore, to truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others is the practice of Bodhisattva. As Bodhisattva Charyavatara says, all happiness in the world comes from wishing others to be happy. All suffering in the world comes from wishing oneself to be happy. What need is there to say more? Look at the difference between the ordinary people who think of themselves and the Buddha, who has become enlightened, thinking of benefiting others. So if you're able to do that, then you are happy in this life, in the future lives. So whether in terms of temporary goal or in the ultimate goal, you have benefit. Practicing bodhicitta, exchanging oneself and others. So you have to make the cultivation of bodhicitta based on the 7-point cause and effect instruction, or exchanging self and others, the main practice. So when you train your mind as a Mahayana practitioner, you have to make yourself not being overcome by the unfavorable conditions. Even if you face unfavorable conditions, you have to make yourself being able to turn that into favorable conditions. So if you are able to do that, you are wise. And if you are able to make yourself undaunted by suffering, you are a hero. So you have to, if you are able to cultivate, if you are able to have the bodhicitta, which is helped by wisdom as well, then you will be able to maintain your own happiness deep within. And however many different unfavorable conditions you may face, you'll be able to turn them into favorable conditions for yourself, and for leading yourself to Buddhahood for the benefit of others. So if from within your mind you could develop some understanding and some experience of bodhicitta, then whatever you do could be able to, you could turn them to for the cultivation of merit and purification of negativities, and you are happy. As Bodhisattva Charyavatara says, from then on, whether you are unconscientious or unhateful, or you are sleeping and so forth, you'll be able to accumulate lots of merit unceasingly, incessantly. So if you're able to transform yourself from within, there will be of great benefit. And so now, from verse number 12, it shows how to overcome unfavorable conditions and accrue the favorable conditions. Next verse: if someone cuts off your head, even when you have not done the slightest wrong, through the power of compassion, to take his misdeeds upon yourself is the practice of Bodhisattva. Around 1958, in Tashikil Monastery, which is popularly known as Labrang Monastery, one Lama has written a book that I don't remember the name of this Lama, but he has written his book that in 1958, when many of the monks were being persecuted and killed by the Chinese, one of the geshes at Tashikil Monastery asked to give some short time, and the prison guards gave him time, and during that time he said, may through the blessing of the Guru, may all the suffering of the sentient beings of the entire world ripen upon me, and may I be able to give away to them the merits that I have collected. So after having made that prayer from Lama Chöpa, then the Chinese prison guards shot him to death. Next verse, verse number 14 and verse number 15. If in the middle of the crowd of people some reveals your hidden faults and abuses you, for them to see him as a spiritual friend and to bow him with respect is the practice of Bodhisattva. And then the next verse also is on this read. And the next verse is being read. Next. When you are too rich or when you are too poor with destitution, then you may decline in your practice of cultivating bodhicitta. And therefore, that's the next verse, which says, though gripped by poverty and always scorned and so forth, shows how to deal with such situations. When you are too poor, with the help of mindfulness and introspection, how to cultivate bodhicitta. And then the next verse, though famous and prominent, someone to whom others bow, though you may amass the riches like that of the gods of wealth, to see the worldly splendor has no essence, and thus to be without arrogance is the practice of Bodhisattva. Because when people praise you or honor you and so forth, then it may may cause you to become arrogant. And at that time, there is danger of again declining in your practice, weakening in your practice of bodhicitta. So, as in the 8 verses of mind training says, may I hold others supremely as supreme all the time. You have to be able to do that when others praise you and you become famous and so forth. And then the next verse, if you have not pacified the enemy of your own anger, combating outer opponents will only make them multiply. This verse shows how to counter those of attachment and anger. And then the next verse, sensual pleasures are like salt water. The more you partake of them, the more your craving will increase. Therefore, when something arouses attachment, abandon it immediately is a practice of Bodhisattva. And then the next verse, all appearances are your own mind. From this verse, what is shown is that of the meditation or cultivation of wisdom of emptiness. The ultimate bodhicitta. So the first 2 lines, all appearances are your own mind, and mind itself primarily transcends all mental fabrications. What it shows is that all the outer external appearances, the objects, are, to interpret it according to the mind-only school, it says all the objects transcends all mental fabrications. And then the second line shows that of the mind itself primarily transcends all mental fabrications. So it can be interpreted according to mind-only school as well as Madhyamaka, when you talk about being free from all fabrications. So according to Madhyamaka thought, all these appearances that are around you, if you try to check within themselves, you'll not be able to find anything that you can point to as being this and that. And similarly, in the mind, the internal world of the mind, which gives rise to, of course, our pleasure and unpleasant experiences. If you try to check within the mind, then you will not be able to point to something as being the mind itself. And you have within the mind those of the sensory and mental consciousnesses. Within the mental, you have those of the waking state mind, and then the dream state mind, and then deep sleep state mind. And then there are those of the gross and subtle levels of mind. When all the 80 different conceptions have ceased, stopped, then it's questionable whether this the definition of mind, which is that of being clear and aware, can be applied to it or not. It's questionable, because Ketum Nosang Gyatso says that this subtle, when you reach the subtle mind, it has this appearance of as if you attain or realize emptiness. So of course, when we take a rebirth and go through the process of dying, this happens naturally, but we are not able to use it for our spiritual development and progress. So we are rather like at the time of that clear light state, we rather are like in a state of fainting, unconsciousness. But through the practice of yoga, meditation, then people are able to use this state and turn it into a special experience, it seems. So Hayas Yoga Tantra shows this, how to use this clear light. And the profundity of Hayas Yoga Tantra also comes from this, as well as the Dzogchen, also Mahamudra. Whether you take the path of, whether it's the path of Guya Samaja or the Guya Kala Chakra, and or those of the Mother Tantra for actualizing the clear light, everything is based on this subtle level of mind. Generally, we define mind as being something which is luminous and aware. But we just should leave it at the conventional level. So whether it's the external world or the internal world of the mind, if you try to find and analyze and find them, then you will not be able to point to anything as being the external world or the mind itself. So if when you try to check within each and everything which are designated as being this and that, if you try to find them, they will not be able to point to anything as being this and that. They're from the side of the objects. And then what you find is emptiness, and which is the true nature of how things actually are. And if you try to find that and check that emptiness again, you will not be able to point to anything as being that emptiness, because that in turn is also intrinsically empty. So in relation to emptiness of emptiness, the first emptiness is just imputed. So you have to be able to destroy all objectification of everything. And knowing this and to remain free from apprehending the signs of subject and objects is the practice of Bodhisattva. And then once you have remained in that absorption and meditation on emptiness, you in the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, there are multiple reasonings. In each chapter, multiple reasonings are used to establish emptiness. And there are many different reasonings, such as the Tetralema and dependent origination, so forth, to establish logically that of emptiness. And so you have to do both analytical meditation, and having done analytical meditation and having come to the conclusion of the emptiness itself, then you should concentrate your mind on that object of emptiness. And so you have to do them hand in hand. And verse number 23 finished, and verse number 24. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream, which shows that of the practice during the post-meditation session, where you see things like illusion. And then the next verse shows that of the practice of the perfection of generosity. And next to that, the next one shows the perfection of morality. And then the next verse shows the perfection of patience. Next verse, which says if Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas and so forth, shows that of the perfection of effort. So these four perfections are shown by these verses, and then next verse shows that of the union of shamatha and vipassana. So although the concentrations at the of the formless realms are very powerful, they are not able to cut the root of samsara, and therefore you need this understanding. Here the cultivation of shamatha or concentration is not so much for the sake of the shamatha itself, but in order to cut the root of samsara, and therefore to develop or cultivate that of the wisdom realizing selflessness, leading us to that of liberation. And with regards to cultivation of the calm abiding, of course we find very clear explanation of it in the Lamrim Chemo of Jetongkapa. And if you go to Indian sources, it is clear in the middle stages of meditation. Is this Kamala Shila's middling stages? Stages of meditation translated in Russian. So you have to in this text you find very clear explanation of cultivation of this calm abiding concentration. So this text was written in Tibet, and if you could read all the three books of this, it would be good. But particularly the middle part would be good. And then next verse shows that of meditation of emptiness. And after that it says if you do not analyze your own faults, you might put on a dharmic facade while behaving in a non-dharmic way. Therefore, to continually analyze your faults and then discard them is the practice of a bodhisattva. This is very important. If you do not check your own faults, it's very easy for us, ordinary people, to see others' faults, however small they may be, but one is not able to always blind to one's own faults, which may be as huge as a mountain. So says if you do not analyze your own faults, then check your own faults, then you might put on a facade, dharmic facade, while behaving in a dharmic way. So if you are a monk, you should remind yourself of being a monk, Gyalong Getsu, or you may think of yourself as, remind yourself as a follower of the Buddha. Otherwise, you may think that you are a practitioner of a Dharma, and you are a Gelong or Lama, and in my case, the Dalai Lama, and so forth. Then you might turn the dharmic practice into non-dharmic ones. And so, therefore, to continually analyze or check your faults and then discard them is the practice of Bodhisattva. next verse, if compelled by your own afflictions, you speak of faults of others bodhisattvas. As it is said, when you are amongst others, many in a gathering, you have to check your speech. When you're alone, you should check your mind. And then the next verse. Verse number 35. There are many different ways of overcoming our destructive emotions. In the Dzogchen tradition, there's 9 yanas. So first is that of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddha yanas, and the Bodhisattva Sutra yana are called. There's three. There are these 3 vehicles. So the term that is used is Kunjun Denpe Thekpa. So what you are doing here is developing the antidotes, the immediate antidotes against those of the different destructive emotions, such as anger being counteracted by that of loving kindness, and attachment by that of meditating on the repulsive nature of body and so forth. And then there are the tantric parts, where the term that is used in the Dzogchen tradition is Wangyur Tapki Thekpa, the skillful means of gaining mastery in skillful means, which refers to turning the destructive emotions as conducive condition for your path. Because all the destructive emotions themselves, because there are the nature in the nature of mind, there is this luminous nature in them. And so when you are able to maintain that luminous nature, the destructive emotions are said to dissolve themselves. And so there is such a method of overcoming the delusions. So therefore in Tantra you find mention of taking desire and anger into the path. Although the anger itself is not made the path, but with the help of that, you use it to be able to benefit others. And similarly, the desire is taken the path in terms of generating the blissful experiences by the dissolution of the bodhicitta. So here, the whole of the teaching of the Buddha is for overcoming our destructive emotions. So in brief, it says wherever you are and whatever you do, always examine the state of your mind. Continuously working for the welfare of others is the practice of Bodhisattva. And then the next verse. And then the next verse. And after that, verse after that. And lastly, it's the author dedicates the virtues that he has collected from writing this text. And in the end, it says this text was written by Ngöchu Togme, the monk Togme, in the precious cave of Ngulchu. So the author Ngöchu Togme Sangpo himself was a great practitioner of Bodhisattva. So in his name there's the title Gyaltse, which doesn't mean that he was a prince, but at that time when he was alive, he was known as Bodhisattva. So this Gyaltse means the son of a Buddha, or a child of a Buddha, which is another name for Bodhisattva. So I have seen a text written by him, commentary to the Sutra Alamkara by Maitreya. So he was a contemporary of Buddhan Rinchen Drup. I received the commentary on this text from Konu Lama Tenzin Gyaltsen, who was himself a great master of the Bodhisattvacharya Avatara and a great practitioner of bodhicitta. So this is all about the 37 practices of bodhisattvas.